Welcome to the Fragments of Me. This channel shares fictional emotional stories inspired by real-life situations. All characters and events are created for storytelling and entertainment purposes only.
You know what's crazy? Some people think you can't have your cake and eat it too, but honestly, I was living proof they're wrong. I'm Naomi, I'm 26, and for 3 months I had what I thought was the most perfect setup any girl could dream of. There was Andrew, this incredibly attractive, successful guy who worked at some corporate headquarters downtown. We had this amazing casual arrangement where he'd wine and dine me at upscale places. The sex was incredible, and there was zero pressure or drama. Then there's Theo, my ex of 6 years who I stayed close with after we broke up about 9 months ago. I know people get all weird about staying friends with exes, but Theo and I just worked as friends. We'd grab dinner once a week, text constantly throughout the day, call each other when we needed someone to vent to. He basically understood me better than anyone else ever had. When I first started seeing Andrew, I was completely upfront about my friendship with Theo. I told him we hung out regularly, that we were still very close, and Andrew seemed totally fine with it. He actually said cool, whatever, when I mentioned it, which I loved about our situation. No jealousy, no possessiveness, no one trying to control anyone else's social life. I could maintain my friendship with Theo while also enjoying this exciting new thing with Andrew. Theo and I kept up our usual routine: weekly dinner dates, daily good morning and good night texts, long phone calls when either of us had a rough day. Between you and me, there were definitely moments I wondered if we might eventually get back together. But for now, this arrangement worked perfectly for everyone involved. Andrew was incredible in so many ways. Amazing in bed, always generous with money, made me laugh constantly. Theo was my emotional support system and knew my entire history. Why should I have to choose between them? The whole thing felt so natural and effortless. I could have dinner with Theo on Tuesday night, spend Wednesday evening at Andrew's apartment, and nobody was getting hurt or feeling neglected. Andrew got this fun, sexy woman in his life without any complicated relationship baggage, and I got to keep the most important friendship I'd ever had while also exploring something new and exciting. It was literally the best of both worlds. Andrew never asked invasive questions about my time with Theo, never made weird comments or acted possessive. I genuinely thought he was just mature enough to understand that healthy people can maintain platonic friendships with their exes. I thought he was different from those insecure guys who need to monitor and control every aspect of their girlfriend's social circle. Everything changed completely 2 weeks ago. Andrew and I were at his apartment after an incredible evening out. He'd taken me to this high-end steakhouse, we'd had mind-blowing sex, and I was feeling so content and satisfied with how perfectly everything was going between us. That's when he suddenly brought up wanting to make things more serious. I was lying there in his bed, still buzzing from the expensive wine and all the attention he'd given me, and honestly, I felt flattered that a guy like Andrew wanted to commit to me exclusively. Having someone that attractive and successful want to make things official felt like a huge compliment and validation. But then he kept talking, and everything shifted dramatically. "I'd definitely be interested in that," he said, "if you're willing to cut your ex completely out of your life." I actually burst out laughing because I assumed he had to be joking around with me. Cut Theo out of my life? Theo who'd been my rock through absolutely everything? Theo who knew me better than I sometimes knew myself? I started patiently explaining how Theo and I are genuinely just friends now. How our relationship is completely platonic. How there's absolutely nothing romantic or sexual happening between us anymore. But Andrew wasn't budging even slightly. He had this totally serious expression on his face and said he doesn't date women who go on dinner dates with their ex-boyfriends, that he doesn't grab drinks or hang out with any of his exes, so he thinks it's completely reasonable and fair to expect me to do the same thing. Reasonable and fair? This man I'd known for exactly 3 months thought he could dictate who I'm allowed to be friends with? I tried so hard to stay calm and rational about the whole thing. I carefully explained that Theo had helped me through the absolute darkest, most difficult period of my entire life. That our friendship meant the world to me. that cutting him off would be unnecessarily cruel and completely unfair to someone who'd done nothing wrong. But Andrew just kept robotically repeating this boundary bullshit like a broken record player. If you want an exclusive relationship with me, you're going to have to completely cut ties with him, he said, like he was graciously offering me some incredible deal instead of making an absolutely insane and controlling demand. When I told him there was no way in hell I was throwing away a 6-year friendship for someone I'd been casually hooking up with for 3 months, he just shrugged his shoulders dismissively. Fine by me, we can just keep things casual then. Just like that, like my feelings and emotions were completely irrelevant and meaningless to him. That's when I absolutely lost my mind. Here was this guy acting like he was doing me some massive favor by keeping me around as his convenient hookup when I wouldn't submit to his ridiculous controlling demands. I told him he was being insecure and controlling, that healthy adult relationships are built on trust and communication, not ultimatums and jealousy. Any truly confident, secure man would understand that platonic friendships with exes are completely normal and healthy in modern dating. But Andrew just sat there with this infuriatingly calm expression, claiming he wasn't being insecure at all. He just had firm boundaries that he wouldn't compromise on. What complete garbage. This was pure jealousy and possessiveness, disguised as some mature relationship principle. I brought up how he still follows most of his exes on Instagram and likes their photos regularly, how he'd casually mentioned grabbing coffee with some woman from his past just the previous month. Suddenly, his precious, non-negotiable boundaries didn't seem quite so consistent or important. That's completely different, he said without any explanation. Different how exactly? Because he's a man and gets different rules? Because his past relationships somehow don't matter, but mine are threatening? The whole situation exploded into this massive, heated argument. I was desperately trying to make him see how completely unreasonable and hypocritical he was being. How cutting off Theo would hurt an innocent person who'd done absolutely nothing wrong to either of us. Theo had been nothing but respectful and appropriate about our casual dating situation. He'd never caused any drama, never tried to interfere with what Andrew and I had, never even asked invasive or inappropriate questions about our relationship. Andrew's problem wasn't with anything Theo had actually said or done. It was entirely about his own insecurities and trust issues that he refused to address. But instead of working on himself like a mature adult should, he wanted me to sacrifice my most important friendship to make him feel better. The more I tried to explain things logically and reasonably, the more stubborn and inflexible Andrew became. He kept saying the exact same thing over and over like some kind of malfunctioning robot. If you want a relationship with me, you cut ties with him completely. If not, we stay casual forever. Like those were literally my only 2 options in the entire universe. Like he was being incredibly generous by even allowing me to remain in his life at all. By the end of that horrible night, I was crying from pure frustration and emotional exhaustion, and he remained completely unmoved by my tears. He drove me home in total, uncomfortable silence, and I could feel that something fundamental and irreparable had changed between us. The following few weeks were absolute torture for me. Andrew stuck exactly to what he'd said. We stayed casual, but the entire dynamic between us had shifted completely and dramatically. He still wanted to hook up whenever it was convenient for his schedule, but suddenly the nice dinners became cheap fast food. The frequent texting turned sporadic and cold. The whole relationship went from him actively pursuing me and making me feel special and desired, to me constantly wondering when or if I'd hear from him next. It felt like I was being systematically punished for having self-respect and refusing to be controlled by his unreasonable demands. Meanwhile, I kept venting to Theo about the entire infuriating situation, and he was incredibly supportive and understanding through all of it. He kept reminding me that any man truly worth my time wouldn't try to control or manipulate who I'm allowed to be friends with. You've known me for 6 whole years, he pointed out logically. You've known him for 3 months total. The math is pretty straightforward here. That's when it really hit me how absolutely right Theo was about everything, and how completely wrong Andrew was being about the entire situation. But I also started noticing specific things about how Andrew was treating me now that really bothered and hurt me. Like how he would take literal hours to respond to my texts when he used to respond within minutes of receiving them. How he'd make these subtle, cutting comments about my clothes or my hair that felt more critical and mean than flirty or complimentary. How he'd deliberately bring up other women in our conversations, mentioning how chill and drama-free they were or how they didn't come with complications or baggage. It felt like he was intentionally punishing me for not giving in to his controlling demands. The absolute worst part was how he'd act completely normal and charming when we were actually together in person, like nothing had changed at all between us. But then treat me like I was totally disposable and replaceable afterward. He'd cancel our plans at the very last minute without any real explanation, show up late without bothering to apologize, completely forget important things I'd told him that he used to care about and remember. It was like he was deliberately showing me exactly what casual meant to him, that I didn't matter enough for basic human respect or consideration. I started feeling like I was constantly auditioning for his attention and approval instead of just enjoying what we used to have together. But every single time I brought up how differently and poorly he was treating me now, he'd throw it back in my face and say this was exactly what I'd chosen for myself. That if I wanted more respect and consideration from him, I knew exactly what I needed to do to get it. Everything reached a complete breaking point last week, when Andrew and I happened to run into his friend Gavin at some restaurant downtown. Gavin was there with his long-term girlfriend, and they were being all cute and coupley together, talking about their weekend plans and sharing inside jokes like actual partners do. I could see Andrew watching them interact, and for just a brief moment, I thought maybe he was finally realizing and understanding what we could actually have together if he just stopped being so controlling and unreasonable about my friendship. But then Gavin asked directly if Andrew and I were officially together yet, and Andrew said without hesitation, "Nah, Naomi's got way too much baggage for anything serious." Baggage. He called my loyal friendship with Theo baggage. Right there in front of his friend, like I wasn't even sitting at the same table listening to every word. I forced myself to smile and laugh it off in the moment because I didn't want to cause a public scene. But inside, I was absolutely seething with rage and humiliation. The moment Gavin left our table, I immediately confronted Andrew about what he'd just said. How dare he call my friendship baggage? How dare he make me sound like damaged goods to his friends? How dare he act like I was some kind of problem when he was the one being completely unreasonable about everything? But Andrew just casually shrugged it off like it meant nothing at all. "Well, isn't it baggage?" he said so matter-of-factly. "You refuse to move forward because you're stuck living in the past." That's when I really unleashed everything I'd been holding back and let him have it. I told him he was being manipulative and emotionally abusive, using our casual status to treat me like garbage while dangling the possibility of more just out of reach like some kind of carrot. I told him any real, secure man would be confident enough to handle his girlfriend having platonic male friends. I told him he was probably just threatened and intimidated by Theo because Theo actually knew how to treat me with genuine respect and kindness, unlike him. Andrew listened to my entire passionate rant with that same infuriating calm expression plastered on his face, then said something that made my blood absolutely boil with fury. "You're literally proving my point right now. You're way more invested in defending him than you are in building something real with me. Like I was supposed to apologize for standing up for myself and my best friend, like wanting basic human decency and respect was somehow asking too much from him. We haven't spoken a single word since that horrible fight, and honestly, I'm starting to think Andrew never actually wanted a real, committed relationship with me at all. I think he just wanted to see if he could force me to choose him over Theo. And when I refused to play his sick, manipulative games, he decided I wasn't worth any effort. It's been 4 months since Andrew and I completely ended things, and I honestly thought I'd feel relieved and free from his controlling, manipulative behavior. but life had some incredibly cruel surprises waiting for me that I never could have seen coming. First, I found out through Gavin's chatty girlfriend that Andrew had started seriously dating someone else just 2 weeks after our final fight. Some woman from his office who apparently doesn't come with any drama or complications. The way she said it made it crystal clear that Andrew had been talking about me to everyone in his social circle, probably painting me as this difficult, unreasonable person who couldn't handle simple relationship boundaries. But here's where everything gets really twisted and painful. Theo started acting completely different and distant around the exact same time period. He'd been so incredibly supportive and understanding through the whole Andrew situation, always available to listen when I needed to vent and process everything. But suddenly, he was taking forever to respond to my texts, and constantly canceling our weekly dinner plans, with increasingly lame excuses that didn't make any sense. When I finally cornered him and demanded to know what was going on, he dropped a bomb that completely shattered my world. He'd been secretly seeing someone for the past month and a half. Someone he described as really special and amazing. Someone he thought he might actually be falling in love with for real. I didn't want to hurt you while you were dealing with all the Andrew drama, he said. Like he was being considerate instead of sneaky. But I think we need to create some serious distance now. Madison isn't comfortable with how close we are, and I need to respect her feelings about it. Madison. Even her basic name sounded perfect and uncomplicated, just like Andrew's new office girlfriend probably was. Theo, my Theo, who'd been my constant support system and best friend for 6 entire years, was choosing some random woman he'd known for barely a month over our deep, meaningful friendship. The exact same friendship I'd just sacrificed a potential serious relationship to protect and preserve. I tried desperately to explain to him how incredibly unfair and hypocritical this entire situation was. How I'd literally lost Andrew specifically because I'd refused to give up our friendship, and now he was just throwing it all away anyway for someone he'd barely gotten to know. But Theo just said he understood it was really painful and difficult for me to accept, but he had to prioritize his future and happiness now. His future, that apparently didn't include the person who'd been there for him through absolutely everything important in his life. When I asked him point blank what made Madison so incredibly special that she got to dictate and control his friendships when I'd never once done that to him during our entire relationship, he said she wasn't dictating anything at all. He was making this choice completely on his own because he wanted to build something real and lasting with her. Something that apparently required erasing me from his life entirely. So here I am, 5 months later, completely and utterly alone in ways I never thought possible. Andrew's posting happy, loving photos all over social media with his uncomplicated new girlfriend, who probably thinks having male friends is weird and inappropriate anyway. Theo moved in with Madison after just 4 months of dating and actually blocked me on every social media platform, after I sent what I thought were completely reasonable messages, explaining how devastated and betrayed I felt by his sudden abandonment. All my other friends are completely exhausted from hearing about this situation and keep telling me I need to move on with my life and focus on finding someone new who appreciates me. But none of them truly understand that I didn't do anything wrong in any of this. I stayed loyal to my best friend and got punished severely for it. I refused to be controlled and manipulated by some guy I barely knew, and lost everything that actually mattered to me in the process. The absolute worst part happened just last week when I saw Andrew at a coffee shop near where I work. He looked completely relaxed, happy, and at peace, like he'd never given me a single thought since our relationship ended. When our eyes met across the crowded room, he just gave me this polite, distant nod and immediately turned back to his conversation. Like I was a complete stranger he'd never met before. Like those 3 intense months we spent together meant absolutely nothing significant to him at all. Meanwhile, I'm still here trying to figure out how everything went so completely wrong when all I did was refuse to let someone control and manipulate my life. I guess that's what I get for thinking I could have both a romantic relationship and my important friendships. Apparently, you really can't have everything you want, no matter what people try to tell you about modern dating and relationships.